Hello, it's 2024 and drones are now being used for all sorts of purposes, whether it's mapping farms or inspecting buildings. If you name it, if there's a use case, drones are being used for it. And one of the new novel use cases that you see a lot of demand for is actually something called progress tracking. So progress tracking, or essentially 4D drone data, is a new way of looking at drone data where you're not just capturing the same site once, but you're capturing it multiple times over and over. And what you're really trying to do is trying to understand how the site or the asset is changing over time. And some of these changes can actually be valuable, really valuable to know in advance because it can allow you as an end customer make data-driven decisions. And data-driven decisions is basically what drone data is all about. And enabling those decisions by building in these workflows is what we really need to enable as an industry. So without further ado, what I'm going to do in this particular video is I'm going to go through a progress tracking use case where I'm going to show you an actual site where a drone was used to capture the same site multiple times. And what I'm going to show you is how you can use Hammer missions to be able to actually track the progress over time. So let's have a look. Right, so we're going to be using Hammer missions to be able to showcase this particular thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go in and log into Hammer. So I just need to press this button here. Oh, in fact, I've already got a session open over here. So we've got Hammer missions over here set up. And what I want to do is I want to actually show you how to actually use drones to track progress on a particular site. This could be a construction site, but it could also be a built-up site where you've got refurbishment work going on or any sort of work that you can imagine that is important to track or can be tracked using aerial data, using drone data. So what I've got here is essentially I'm in the data analysis tab of Hammer. And I've already set up a number of different projects and I've sort of created many different projects over here. So this video assumes that you've looked at Hammer missions previously and you sort of understand how to actually capture data using your flight plans, how to improve the quality of that data, and how to actually 3D model and process that data into a map or a model. So we're not going to go through that, but I'm going to link you to some of the other videos that showcase some of that process. But assuming you understand some of that, I'm going to now actually open up some of these projects. So once this project loads, you will notice that this particular project is actually a construction site. So it's a site where new works are being performed. And what you see on the left-hand side over here is that there is essentially a new development that is being constructed. And it has currently been 3D modeled using drones. So this on the left-hand side over here is the model representing that. If I wanted, I could bring up all the images that were used to capture this particular project. And I've also got all the thumbnails over here to be able to showcase the same project. If I wanted, I can also switch between the 3D and 2D to look at the sites more in a 2D point of view. So you can sort of see there's a 2D map representing this particular site. And just to give you a bit of context, so this particular site, this particular project was actually, the goal here was to actually track the progress of this electrical utility. So what I'm showing on the screen here is essentially an electrical utility that was being installed. And this particular utility or duct had 5 different sections that had to be installed, and they were installed on different days. And drone data over here was essentially serving the purpose of understanding the progress of that utility. What phase is it in? Is it being done correctly? What sort of things you need to look out for? And so all of that was being tracked using drones. And what you see on the top of the screen over here is that 5 different captures were made independently on 5 different days, and they've been organized into a timeline over here. To do that, essentially what was done is that a folder was set up in Hammer Missions. This particular folder here, nothing fancy, it's just a folder. And if I go into this folder, if I click on the edit button, you'll notice that this particular folder was set to be a 4D folder. And a 4D folder essentially is a folder which allows you to actually organize all of your projects into a timeline. You can obviously call it something else. So you can you don't have to call it timeline. You can call it electrical duct tracking. So, but the point is that you need to have the 4D option open for this particular workflow to work. So we're going to save that for now. And we're going to go into the folder. And I've shown you what the first project looks like, so I'm going to go through that one more time. So we've got the first projects over here, but this was captured on 5th of August 2022, and then there was another project that was captured on 5th of November 2022, so a couple of months later. So I'm going to open that project now, and that should also have its own independent model over here on the left-hand side. So you've got a different model over here, and a measurement was also made with along the electrical duct. And as you can see, you've got more of the building structure, building envelope that's sort of come up. So you can actually see more work has been performed on the site. But more importantly, we've actually got a second section of the electrical duct that's been installed. Now, the sort of story carries on. So if I open the third project, you will see that actually the electrical duct has moved on a bit further. So it's actually gone to this part of the site, which is further down at the back. So you've got the electrical ducts installed over there, and then in fourth capture, which happened around December, it sort of moves on further up, and then the last capture, December 2022, is actually looking at that electrical duct very much at the very back. So you've got like the fifth section of it installed over here. So now, obviously, you can sort of already see the power of drone data because it's just like having that sort of those 5 different data sets organized in this particular way where you've got all of the different data available to you, and for you to be able to sort of visualize that and sort of see where the electrical duct is really powerful for site managers and design managers on site, because they can actually very easily understand what stage is the project in. But we're going to go one step further. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to go back to our first capture, and we're going to compare that first capture against the second capture to understand what are the changes on site. So what we're going to do is actually you're going to hit the compare button over here, and then we're going to hit the second project. So we're going to have those 2 projects compared against each other, and we're going to hit the launch button. What that's going to do is that's going to bring up both of those different data sets side by side so that we can actually have one view or one window into both projects. So this sort of is 4D, because if you think about it, you've got your 3D projects, one on the left-hand side and one on the right-hand side, organized in a timeline. And being able to see them both from one vantage point is almost sort of like you're traveling through time, right? So it's sort of like giving you that visibility where you're able to understand how has the site changed. And what you can then do is, once you've got these projects side by side, moving any one of these projects is actually going to move the other one at the same way. So it just allows you to kind of easily look at that section of the site where you've got works going on, and you can compare what's different. And so you can already see that you had the first section of the electrical duct that was installed, and you can kind of see the length of that. And then you can also see the second section that was installed further up over here. But to make this even easier for your client or stakeholder to understand, what you can do is you can actually press this compare button on the right-hand side over here. So if you click on the compare button, it's going to basically merge both of those 3D data sets into one view. And once you've got both of them into one view, what you can do is you can actually slide across them. And sliding across them really helps you to be able to visualize the changes on site. So let's see if this is all loaded up. So what you will notice is that actually on our left-hand side, we've got the capture from the very first capture, and on the right-hand side, we've got the capture from the second capture. And if I was to take this particular project and actually move and scroll close to the electrical duct, and get this particular vantage point going, I can actually see this is the ground that has been dug up on the first capture. And if I use the slider and I move it across, I see that particular portion is now complete in the second capture. What I do notice is that in the second capture, we've got the second part of the electrical duct that's being installed over here, which in the first capture was basically a completely undug portion of the ground. So it just allows you to very easily sort of see what are the changes, and you can go and have a look at the data from any vantage point, whether it's sort of 2D or 3D, and that just allows you to very easily see what are the changes on site. What you'll also notice is that, we might be interested in one particular object, for example, the electrical duct. But a lot of the times when you're looking at these projects, as someone who is responsible for the project or responsible for parts of the project, as a project manager or a site manager, you might pick up on other things as well. So obviously, I can see over here that more of the the building on this side has been completed. So you can sort of see what has been done over here. There's more works that has been completed, in a matter of a couple of months, and that just allows you to have further insight. It just helps you understand how much work has been completed, by when, what suppliers need to get paid, how do you manage your cash flows, because if you think about construction, construction's a really, really challenging environment. You've got so many things happening on site, so many suppliers coming in, going out, and you've got to stay on top of so many things that actually drone data allows you to have that bird's eye view into your entire site, where you can very easily understand what is changing, what is working, what is not working, and then make those data-driven decisions. Because ultimately, the better decisions you make, the better plans you make, and the better plans you make, that leads to a lot of cost savings and also actually helps contractors, engineers, and architects win more projects. So I think we in the drone industry get too obsessed by the drone, but I think we shouldn't really underestimate the power of drone data and what it can enable. Right. Okay. So that's one particular use case where you can sort of clearly see the tracking of the electrical ducts. And obviously, like if you were to compare not just the second project and the first project, but maybe the first and the last project, you can also sort of see the difference, which is probably going to be night and day, because you've obviously got a lot more work that's been completed in those months. So I'm just scrolling back to our original project here. So I've got the original project here, which is the first capture on the 5th of August. Let's say if I want to compare that now with the last project, so I can just choose those two and they will load up side by side. And what that enables me to do is that now I'm comparing what did the project look like at its very start and what did the project look like after the duct was installed. And again, it just allows you to sample two very different points in the life cycle of this particular building or life cycle of this particular project, and then make those data-driven decisions accordingly. So I can see that from the second capture, you can already see a lot more work has been completed. Even if you wanted to look at some of the facades, so if I zoom in, you can actually see that more of the facade work has been completed on a lot of this site. Now, these data sets didn't actually involve facade capture. They were very much just looking at the data from the nadir point of view. But if you wanted, you can also add in facade images and actually just capture the facades on a monthly basis if you've got work being carried on, and you can track them separately in a separate folder. But yeah, overall, what you can see is that the fifth section of the electrical ducts was installed over here. And this was obviously not even started on the left-hand side, but it was sort of getting to the completion stage on the last side, on the last project, basically. So, and you can zoom in and get a very, very close-up view into what's going on. And what that really helps is that it also allows you to pick up issues. So what I'm going to do is that instead of looking at two different data sets across a different timeline, I'm going to now go back to one of the data sets from the middle of the capture, from the middle of the project. So I'm actually going to go to this data set over here, which was captured on 23rd of November 2022. So if I open that particular data set, that should take me to the project, which was very much in the middle of the progress tracking phase. And what you'll notice in that particular project is something slightly different. So what you'll notice is that in this particular project, or in this particular capture of the project, the electrical duct is essentially supposed to be installed in this particular part. So you can sort of see the ground's been dug. If we click on that, we'll see what's been left as a comment. And when we click on that, what we see is that the comment's been left over here that the third stage of the electrical duct has begun. However, the duct has not been installed as yet. We expect installation to be complete in the next 2 to 4 weeks. This is an issue currently delaying the project. That's true. I mean, if you look at it, there is no duct that's been installed yet, and so it seems like the drone capture was scheduled after the duct. The third section was installed, but it was not installed yet. And so over here, as a project manager or a site manager, you have a very clear handle of an insight as to what's going on in the project, and you can sort of stay on top of that. You can track that over time to understand where is this particular issue. You can leave your own comment over here. Um, so you can sort of like go ahead and say, thanks for reporting. Um, we are on top of it. You can essentially leave that comment as part of a common thread, and you can sort of use this as a way, you can use the drone data almost as a sort of a foundation for your team to sort of discuss particular issues. Um, and you can not only look at the model, but you can also pick up images. So if I sort of like bring out the actual drone image that shows that particular part of the data set, you can actually load it up on the right hand side over here. And if we zoom in, we can actually see more details. So on the model, you may not be able to sort of see every single thing. For example, things like people on sites, which might be difficult to capture in a model because of the footprint, small footprint they might have on the site. You can actually see them on the particular image. And in fact, you can sort of see that they're still on site, they're still working, so maybe progress is still going on. So if you need to sort of get on a call and discuss with the site managers or the team leads over there, you can actually have a chat and understand where the project's at. So it's not really a big issue in terms of sort of something not being completed, but at the end of the day, you're able to sort of get that information from the software itself, as opposed to sort of getting on calls with people and potentially not leveraging the time that you have available in the best way. And all of this data essentially is stored on the cloud, so you're able to actually query that later on and really understand how the site is changing, how things have over time matured. But once again, you can do a measurement. So if you wanted to understand what is the measurement of the electrical duct that will be installed, you can sort of like go ahead and do that. One thing I should mention here is that all of the actual 3D models that are generated are dimensionally correct. So whilst every measurement you make might have some accuracy error, they are still accurate in terms of the units they're in terms of the metric units they're in, and they can be used to be able to get a crude estimate for how tall, long, or short something might be. So you can sort of see that through the drone data itself. So you've got basically 5 different data sets over here. I showcased how you can actually compare the first 2 data sets to understand how things are changing. You can also look at the difference between the first data set and the last data set. You can leave comments to be able to understand where something is, and you can actually track that with your team to be able to sort of build that ongoing maintenance of that particular project. And it's really important to empower people with these tools, because one of the things that I get very passionate about is that, you know, drones are ultimately they're just flying robots that enable all of this. And till we actually get the industry to a point where we're using all of these tools to track time, to track tasks, to track productivity, and actually save some of those important metrics in our business, till that point, the drone will seem like a cost. But once you start sort of seeing those value metrics come to life, whether it's saving time or cost, it suddenly you sort of don't see the drone as a cost. You sort of almost start seeing it as a companion on your site teams to be able to understand how things are changing. So it's very, very, very nuanced, but I think it's an interesting view to sort of take. Right. Okay. So now one thing you might be wondering is that, of course, if you were to do this on a weekly basis, and if a project was like 18 months long, you could end up with like 70, 80 different captures over that time period. Or if it was a 24-month long project, you could probably see, you know, 100 captures for a weekly site progress. So in that sort of scenario, how do you actually track progress without sort of manually going in and reviewing all the data? Well, we've thought of that, and so to be able to address that particular use case, what you need to do is you need to use Hamlet. So Hamlet is an AI solution that's been built into Hammer Missions. And what Hamlet allows you to do is that it actually allows you to go in and speak to it with respect to a particular project, and you can ask it questions. So you can ask it questions to the tune of when was something completed, or when was something annotated, or when was something done, and it will bring up the relevant answers for you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to select the folder that I'm interested in. So I'm going to select the progress tracking folder, and I'm going to ask Hamlet certain questions with respect to the project. Right, so what I've done now is that I've got a project selected, and that's basically the progress tracking project. And so Hamlet said, well, great, now that I know which projects to select and to talk about, feel free to ask me any questions and I will do my best to answer them. Right, okay. So let's have a look. So maybe as a project manager, once this project's been complete or whilst it's undergoing, maybe I'm interested in figuring out when was the first part of the electrical duct installed in this project. So I'm just going to ask that particular question because I'm just interested in figuring out times at this stage. And it just sort of allows me to sort of at least understand or get some context as to sort of like when was the project started. And as you can see, Hamlet's gone in and actually dug into the data, and it's sort of figured out that the first part of the electrical duct was installed on the 5th of August as part of the capture one of the project, which is correct. So and if we wanted, we can actually get a link to that. So can you link me to the Capture One project? Can you give me a link to the Capture One project? Let's see what happens there. I've just requested a link because now, you might have 100 different captures that you're looking for. So, okay, Hamlet's gone out there and actually found the link for us, which is correct. So we've got a link to that project, and we can actually just click on the link and we can very quickly zoom in and sort of see, oh, okay, there we go. And we can see the annotation, we can see the electrical duct, the installation start, and we can sort of see that's where the project's at. Brilliant. All right. Well, so far so good. So I'm going to get rid of that. Let's say I want to ask about measurements. So I can ask and say, what were the measurements of the electrical ducts in various stages of this project? So over here, what I'm interested in is that if you recall from some of the data sets that I showcased, we had lots of different measurements that were made with every single electrical duct that was installed. And so over here, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to get Hamlet to give me all those measurements. So here we go. We've got all of the stage 1 to stage 5 measurements that have been listed here for us. So we've got everything from the length to the slope, to the length, and so on and so forth. And that's great because yeah, if I just want to get all the measurements, that's great. You can kind of just get that as a. If I wanted, I can also get this as a CSV file, or like I can ask Hamlet to sort of, can you export all the measurements in this project as a CSV file? So let's see what it does. To be honest, I've never asked Hamlet this before, so we'll see what it does. It's also really interesting to sort of like see sort of responses Hamlet comes up with. And ultimately, that's the promise of AI, right? Like, you don't really know what it's going to come back with, but you have this open-ended opportunity where you can sort of like go in and ask it any question that's on the top of your mind. And you might sort of find that it's actually really accurate and sort of like solved your task in a jiffy, or other times maybe it was not so accurate and you had to kind of like go in and do that for yourself. Right. Okay. So, oh wow. So it's actually gone in there and it's sort of created this sort of CSV file for the different projects for every single measurement, and it's also created a CSV. So if I click on that, I wonder if it's just going to download. Oh, yes, it's going to download a CSV for me. That's amazing. Okay. Right, let's moving on. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask it, what were there any issues that were annotated in this project. Um, so obviously, like this project is being maintained by not just one person, but many different people. So it could be the case that someone went in and actually annotated the data set with some issue, and you can very easily sort of like bring that up. So yes, there were issues annotated in this project. Here are the details. So yeah, so there are 5 different issues that were annotated. Um, Let me ask it. Maybe you want to filter that through that list and sort of say, were there any severe issues that were annotated in this project? If so, can you link me to the projects? So this is sort of trying to filter through the issues that have been annotated. And what you're trying to do is sort of figure out, was there something critical? If there were 100 different captures, maybe there was something there in the 40th capture or the 60th capture. Okay, right. Severe issues in the project annotations. One of them was related to the electrical duct installation. It was marked as moderate severity. Um, there was a severe issue that was not resolved at the time of the annotation. Okay. And there was another issue. So it's actually gone and sort of found these particular captures. So let's have a look at that. So if you open capture 3 from 23rd of November, there should be, as per Hamlet, a severe issue. Oh yeah, there is actually a moderate issue. So this one is basically, in fact, this is the same issue that we talked about earlier. This is the issue where the duct has not yet been installed, even though the ground has been dug. It may not be a severe issue; it's just a moderate thing, but it's something to keep on top of. So that's great. And it's also found something from Capture 1. So if we have a look at Capture 1, probably that's something low in severity because yeah, so this is a low severity thing. It's sort of like just saying that the 40 meter of cable was installed around this particular project. But yeah, it's not really an issue. It's just marked as a low severe comment. So it's brought up those 2 things that are important and asked us to review them. Brilliant. Okay. What if we wanted to ask it something which is like doing an operation, like let's say some math for us. So let's say, what was the total length of all parts of the electrical ducts installed in this project? So we know that the electrical duct was installed in different phases. There was about 5 stages, and each stage had electrical ducts of somewhere between 20 meters to 40 meters that was installed. And maybe if we don't want to sort of go out there and sort of do all that calculation and just get a crude estimate to that, we can just sort of like ask Hamlet to do that calculation for us. So it sort of come back and said, the total length of all parts of electrical duct in this project is 101 meters. So that looks like it could be right, because we do recall 40 meters being the length across 2 different projects, and then 20 meters on the other 2 projects. So it's actually gone out there and done that for us, which is brilliant. That's pretty much it. So that's basically another added function, really. So it's just a function to be able to give you another way to query the data. And the beauty of drone data is that you've got everything visualized for you. But sometimes when you're looking at progress tracking over tens and hundreds of data sets, it can become laborious to sort of go into every single data set. So just having that ability to be able to not just look at the data visually, but also used a natural language interface to have basically a chat-based interface into the data and to query it really helps you set up your clients or stakeholders for success. So that's pretty much it. So looking at all of this data, you can make all of these decisions and help your teams track your progress on sites and ultimately lead to the project's overall success. Hopefully this video was interesting. So this is very much going into the progress tracking side of things. I should say that this particular workflow can be used not just on construction sites, but also on facades, on roofs, on cell towers. So any particular workflow where you're able to actually track changes, something like this can be employed. Hopefully this was interesting. If it was, do give us a like. And if you want to watch more of these workflows, do subscribe to our channel. We're always interested in hearing what you think. So leave us a comment below. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video for workflow videos.